ward.
I just saw you walking by and I decided to pull you in to see what you thought about what we were doing. So tell me about what you think about what you and I have discussed thus far.
Well, we have several agreements and several disagreements.
I'll tell you what I like about you. You were frank when you came and spoke to me on just about every issue.
Right.
And that is the kind of dialogue that we want here. People from around here in the community, Kingwood and elsewhere, to come and actually engage us. So I want to thank you for coming out and actually having quite a long conversation with me.
The economy's messed up because we messed it up. We quit being a part of the system. And because we are not a part of the system, the elite have taken over. And they started this 100 years ago with what they call the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve is the worst thing that ever could have happened to America. We've had two before, we got rid of them, now we got the last one. If we don't get rid of it, we're always going to be this way and it's going to get a whole lot worse. Bruce Menke.
Well, Bruce Menke, first of all, welcome to Occupy Kingwood. Can you tell me about what brings you out here?
Yes, I support completely the notion that everyone should benefit from our society, not just a small, very narrow margin of 1% or less. And I think we very much lost track of that and really done a number of things that are very damaging to the middle class, and I think we really need to all get very involved in rectifying the situation and restoring real opportunity for everyone.
Now, you're very active in the community. Why don't you tell me a little bit about the things that you do?
We very much believe that public health is such a basic need of everyone. We're also a very religious people, very active in our church, and we feel that there's very much a religious obligation to be concerned about the well-being and of other people.
My name is Karen Menke. I'm out here because I think it's time for the rest of us to speak up. We hear an awful lot about, lower taxes, but those lower taxes are for the millionaires. Those millionaires need to step up and pay their fair share. I mean, we've got a big deficit, and they are a large part of it. They need to be Americans. They need to pay for their bounty.
After all, it is the middle class who affords them the ability to be rich.
Exactly. But for us, when we are the ones who are doing the buying, if we don't have the income, they're not going to move forward, and they need it.
Dr. Theis, you had something interesting that I think merits having to be heard around the country.
A lot of times when we're out here, people will yell, "Get a job." What they don't know is I have a job. I have a good job. I'm doing pretty good. I'm very happy with my life. I'm out here because our society needs to be fixed. I'm upset with the way society treats some of the least among us. The people that are complaining are not all unemployed loafers. Many of us want to live in a fairer, kinder, better society.
Now, yesterday you told me at one of your meetings, somebody asked a prescient question. Why don't you tell me about that?
Well, we were talking about the bank bailout. They said, why shouldn't people be foreclosed on? That those people made bad decisions, and they need to suffer the consequences of their actions. And I would say, I believe people should suffer the predictable consequences of their own actions. But I would say a big issue is, did they intend to take out loans they couldn't pay back? They made mistakes, but it wasn't nefarious in that sense. They weren't trying to get loans that they knew they'd never be able to pay back. The banks, on the other hand, were completely opposite. The banks were giving loans to people they knew could not pay them back. They were hiding the small print to prevent these people from realizing that a few years down the line they wouldn't be able to pay back. One great example, the banks would always tell borrowers, yes, this is an adjustable rate mortgage, but don't worry, if you pay your payments on time, they won't adjust the rates. That was a bald-faced lie.
Professor Davis, welcome again.
Yeah, well, you know, tax day is coming up this Tuesday, Egberto, and I think about that now that Mitt Romney is actually going to be the nominee. I think that really gives us a chance to focus on the tax system, the terrible inequity. We believe progressives do the income tax is a very positive thing, that we need to make it more progressive in terms of the way people are taxed. Mitt Romney's a special example of how the rich really game the system and have so many advantages. Here's someone who hasn't held a real job in the last 10 or 12 years. His job has been running for public office, and he pays a much smaller percentage than the ordinary workman's tip. We need to really do something to correct that. I think the Buffett rule will be a step in the right direction. Well, millionaires have to pay something. It's just outrageous the way that the system itself is being manipulated by these elites. So I think tax day gives us a chance to focus on that and to advocate some reforms that make the system even more progressive and to give us a chance to pay down the debt, pay for the services we need, and make this a lot better country.
Now, with regards to the Paul Ryan budget and the massacre that it does to the middle class, do you have anything on that issue?
Well, I say that, Paul Ryan's a follower of Ayn Rand, and that just underscores that. It's about selfishness, it's about greed, it's about giving even more to the people who frankly have too much already and stripping the resources from those who are so needy. And it moves us in exactly the wrong direction. The fact that he's becoming such a leader in the Republican Party speaks volumes about what the Republican Party represents today.
Future State Representative Cody Pogue.
And I saw a David Dewhurst commercial, and in that commercial he said we need to be more like the greatest generation back during World War II in that era. And I agree to a large extent, but one thing that's kind of interesting is in 1945 when we won in World War II, the tax rate on the richest Americans was 94%. In the 1950s, when Eisenhower, a Republican, was president, the tax rate on the richest Americans was 91%. It's not until the 1960s it finally goes down to the 70s, and it's not until the 80s when it comes down to our modern day levels. What's also interesting is they didn't have very high debt during that time period. If you look at the debt goes up when the taxes on the wealthiest Americans go down when Reagan comes into office. We didn't have this debt issue until the 1980s when we had major tax cuts for the rich. So David Dewhurst says we need to be more like the greatest generation. I don't know, I think 94% tax rate is a little bit too high, probably a lot too high. But what we have now is too low. We need to find somewhere in the middle and go back to that.